Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Democratic View. And my name is Phyllis Italiano, and I'm the hostess. And with me today, I have as my guest a man who was here with me last week, but he had so many interesting things to talk about that I had to ask him to come back because we just barely scratched the surface last time. His name is Carl Grossman. He writes for what is now the East Hampton and Southampton Press, and as a matter of fact, also teaches. Am I correct?
Well, that's my actual full-time job. I'm a professor of journalism at SUNY, the State University of New York College at Old Westbury. Been doing that for 35 years.
Wow, that's wonderful, wonderful. Maybe I should take that class.
It would be an honor.
But I read your column in the press this week, and it is about an issue that is very, very important to the people in East Hampton. And it is, of course, about PSEG and I'm going to call it an invasion of our beautiful town. And when it first happened, people said to me, well, you have to go to McGurk Street. And I said, where is that? I couldn't find it. And then when I turned that corner and I saw what I called a movie set street. You could have filmed Andy Hardy on that street. It was such a beautiful, lovely little houses, you know, people close to each other, a real neighborhood. And there were these enormous poles with wires on them that were just astounding, and you're scared to death of just looking at them. And the smell and the feeling in your mouth from the toxicity of that smell, I really, the tears just came to my eyes. I felt so sorry for these people. I thought, my God, a storm comes along, you know, maybe not the Sandy, but the Gloria, you know, and those poles, if they fell, would crush a house, without a doubt. And it's just a terrible, terrible story that these people have come in to do all of this damage. I might also add that they were invited by our governor, which is amazing since he's running for office. You would think he'd have a little bit more sense than to bring this New Jersey company into the midst of this idyllic town we have that we call East Hampton. So you had a very interesting story this week about the company that, or the organization that is in litigation. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
It's Long Island Businesses for Responsible Energy, and it was developed here in East Hampton. Helene Forrest, Rebecca Singer, the co-chairs of this very important group. And they're trying to stop what's been happening in the courts. I mean, the smell that you were talking about, that's a result of this toxic, it's banned in 26 countries, this toxic chemical that this PSEG has put on the bottom of the poles to treat them. And the stuff has been oozing out. I mean, in the lawsuit, there are photographs of this is called penta. That's the short form for this big, long chemical.
You see it at the bottom of every pole.
Unbelievable. And here on Long Island, we depend on the water below our feet. So what you put in the earth migrates down to the water. No, those poor people, it's 6.2 miles of these transmission lines, high voltage transmission lines, which causes another problem. It's called EMF, which this EMF, these electromagnetic frequency.
Yes.
How could you describe them? There's been all kind of documentation through the years about how they impact, particularly on children with cancer. And I mean, to put these poles 65 foot high, some of them, in this stretch between East Hampton Village and Amagansett, residential communities, unbelievable. And part of the suit, too, challenges what PSEG and Long Island Power Authority didn't do. I mean, what they didn't do, even in the environmental impact statement for this project, was to consider undergrounding the lines. And that would deal with the problem that you note of hurricanes. I mean, we have them with some frequency. I remember Hurricane Gloria back in 1985. I mean, we didn't have electricity for was more than a week. And then, of course, Superstorm Sandy most recently did a number on the above-ground system we have for electricity. No, that we should have electrical lines go below ground.
Like every other developed country?
Well, it would be the prudent thing, the safe thing to do, but we now have the return of, we used to have the Long Island Lighting Company, which was an arrogant, just bulldoze its way through, didn't care what the public wanted, promoted nuclear plants. The Long Island Lighting Company sought to build 7 to 11 nuclear plants on Long Island. Callous, just out of control. And now we have this PSEG from Jersey, which happens to own a couple of nuclear plants. I mean, this is not a green utility.
No.
A new Lilco. It's just awful. And one of the major battlegrounds right here in East Hampton.
I know. I know all those people. As a matter of fact, there's another group called Save East Hampton, and I go to their meetings every Monday afternoon. And I will tell you, I don't like to say it. I can't say it to them. But the minute I'm on that street, I get this feeling in my mouth and in my throat. And, I can't wait to get out of there. And I say to myself all the time, their houses are valueless, which is, I mean, you can't even really say that to these people who live on this street, whose homes are really the investment of their lives. And here they have homes that, who's going to ever buy them?
Well, the lawsuit, $50 million in damages it calls for, and part of that is the devaluation of so many homes, as well as the pain and suffering to all these people, and what's going to happen in the future. And it insists that the poles be removed, which is what they should be removed. You got some excellent lawyers, Irving Light, Professor Friedman, as the attorneys in this action, and I hope it gets somewhere.
Now, where does it go from just, you file a case, where does it go? To the Supreme Court of New York State, or just
Yeah.
the Court of New York State?
No, it's a Supreme Court. I mean, in the state Supreme Court, it's not the level
Yes,
of
I
the
understand.
U.S. Supreme Court.
No, I understand
So there's a
that.
Supreme Court, and there's an appellate division, which people go to, and then there's the highest court in New York State is the Court of Appeals. But it's an important lawsuit, and I think the exposure of the situation through the lawsuit is an important thing in and of itself. I feel really it's too bad that citizens had to raise money to pay for this litigation. I personally think it should be litigation that the town, the county, should join in because, I mean, grassroots efforts, grassroots action, grassroots litigation is great, but you go to court can be expensive. So I would wish that
Well, the county has done really very little.
no.
County has been moot on this whole issue, and it's been really rather discouraging. And I know that the people who have, although our Larry Cantwell did put a stop work order on that
Yes.
place in Amagansett, which is another horror. I mean, it looks like, a Stalag 17 type of thing. It's so horrible. And that sort of stop them in their tracks. And the other thing that the town did do was they just made a declaration that they are going to be looking forward to East Hampton becoming dependent upon solar and wind.
Yeah, well, renewable energy, in quick order, and
Right.
just a few years, the town is committed
Yes.
to having 100% renewable energy powering the town.
And we know about that because you and I both have solar panels on our roofs.
And it's wonderful. I mean,
Yes.
that's good technology, and it works, and I don't, $5 a month is all I have to pay for electricity because they charge for the meter reader to come.
Yes.
But other than that, I mean, the meter is often going backwards. It's producing more electricity
Right.
than
And you know
need.
what? You don't even feel so guilty if you use something electrical. I mean, I always felt so guilty every time I used anything electric because I knew it was being powered by, all this carbon emission. And now I don't feel guilty, when I make my coffee in the morning, and use my toaster.
And we also have thermal panels, so the water comes, down from the roof, even in the winter. Hot, it's like leaving your car with the car windows up, even if it's a cold day. Somehow it gets hot inside. So between the thermal and the photovoltaic, it's sustainable. It's renewable energy. It's here to be harvested.
That's right.
And the sun doesn't send any bills.
I like that
PSEG
line.
does.
And by the way, another thing which has not been really investigated too much, but I remember as in Fire Island maybe 15 years ago or 25 years ago, looking at the tide and saying, that's energy. Why isn't anybody doing tidal energy? Because that is real.
That's happening around the world. Tidal energy.
Yeah.
Energy from just from waves themselves.
Yes.
Now, there's all kinds of ways
To
to
do what,
generate safe, clean, renewable energy we can live with.
and we can put PSEG out of business, or at least get them out of Long Island.
Absolutely.
And it's true that our needs are probably greater than they were 10 years ago. We know that our water, for instance, you're talking about Penta and seeping down into our sole source aquifer, and water is, as far as I am concerned, one of the biggest issues there is.
Long Island, there's only 4, highly or relatively highly populated areas of the United States dependent on the underground water supply, the aquifer below, for their water needs. It's actually South Florida, the area around Spokane Valley in Washington, and the area around San Antonio in Texas, and Long Island. Other places you have rivers coming in. And
Yes.
so what's done to our water is, this is the fluid of life. In fact, even where I'm from actually Queens, and I remember in Queens there had been a pumping station, but in fact the water was ruined. The aquifer in that portion of Long Island to the west was ruined, so folks in the city have to get their water from, the reservoirs upstate, bring the water down in big pipes. But here in Long Island, we have this very, very pure supply of water below our feet, if we can keep it that way. And there's just a few, there's the upper Magathie, the upper glacial, Magathie, and then the Lloyd Aquifer.
Yes.
And just to show you that, you got to fight to save this place. This is back in 2006, 2007. The Suffolk County Water Authority, after a well went bad, big well, Water Authority well went bad in Northport, wanted to dig deeper and deeper to purer water in the lowest portion of the aquifer, the Lloyd Aquifer. Thankfully, the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation stopped that scheme by the Water Authority. But the thing is not to dig deeper, but to stop well, things like penta and other contaminants
Right.
from getting into our water. And the issue now of both groundwater and surface water remaining pure, just critical. I lived, in terms of Long Island, though I'm from the city, my wife and I first lived in Sayville. This is in the 1960s. And it wasn't unlike the East End. I mean, we used to go out in our boat and you could jump into the Great South Bay and unlimited amount of clams.
I know.
Just the sweetest, nicest bay. In terms of clams, 60% of America's hard clams came from the Great South Bay off Bayport and Blue Point and Sayville. I mean, that's economic development. And then just in short order in the 60s, late 60s, early 70s, that area became like Nassau County,
Yes.
so quickly overdeveloped. I have ties out on the East End. My grandparents, actually, on my father's side, settled in Sag Harbor over 100 years ago. My grandfather worked at the watch case factory, which is now being made into
Right.
condominiums in Sag Harbor. Joseph Fahey, who owned that watch case factory, used to look for Hungarian Jewish engravers and Italians as well, Italian engravers, meet these folks on Ellis Island and then take them to Sag Harbor. So that's how my
Well-
grandfather got here, and my grandmother married into the Spitz family, half of whom worked at the watch case factory. So I've had ties out here, but if anybody thinks the East End of Long Island is immune from the overdevelopment that hit Western Long Island, and it happened so quick, I saw it with my eyes.
Yes.
You can't fool
Yes.
yourself. And well,
I remember that when I first went to Fire Island in the 60s, early 60s, I'm talking 61, 62, that I do remember that where the boats came in on the dock in Fair Harbor, in a little shallow area, you could see the scallops dancing around. I had never seen anything like that. A kid from the Bronx, and it was just amazing. And we would go out and, I was called the champion clammer because I could get 100 clams in a shot like this, I would go around kneeling down, picking up the clams and throwing them in, and then it died.
yeah, very
Just
quick, very
died.
quiet. Well, overdevelopment. I did a TV series, actually. This back in 1976, a long time ago, almost 40 years ago, because we had just moved to Noyac near Sag Harbor, and really escaping the sprawl. And I had a TV show on Channel 21, WLIW TV, and I got a grant and took my crew, and we did a 10-part series that aired on Channel 21, also WOR then in the city, Channel 9,
Yes.
called Can Suffolk Be Saved? And I started off on Gardner's Island here in the town of East Hampton. And I do a stand-up in front of the camera saying, this is what all of Long Island once was. But there's this, this broad megalopolis sprawl between Boston and Washington, D.C., all through New York, New Jersey. And it's moving west and east. We here on the east end of Long Island have been so far immune, but it's coming our way. Can Suffolk County, and my concern was particularly the East End, be saved? And just let me note that the head reference librarian at the East Hampton Library, Steve Spatero, happened, this is a few years ago, to come upon these
I know him well. He taught me YouTube.
But he happened to come upon these 3/4-inch tapes, the original master copies for the 10-part series, 5 hours, half-hour shows. And he found them in the Islip Library up in the attic, and he took them back here to East Hampton. He dubbed them onto DVDs. So if anybody wants to see, again, one of the shows is titled Before the Tide of Development. I get into all issues of the bays.
And I know that you recently wrote, 2 weeks ago, you had an article in your paper, which I read religiously, about the water and how we working to save our water, and the real estate or the builders
Long Island Builders Institute.
want to build 50,000 more homes.
But what they did, oh, just if I can jump back to, for a second on the Suffolk Be Saved. If anybody wants to see the shows, just go to the library.
I'm sure he's got them on YouTube.
And it had DVD, and there's also the first one, the one that starts off on Gardener's Island, is on YouTube. So
Yes.
just put my name,
Oh.
Can Suffolk Be Saved, YouTube, and you can watch, again, over 40 years ago, I had hair on the top of my head then. On the water, what that involved was, or involves, was a bill that is being sponsored by Fred Thiel, and Bob Sweeney is the he's the head of the Environmental Preservation or Protection Conservation Committee, I think Environmental Conservation Committee in the State Assembly. And what it tries to do is to set more stringent standards for surface water and the water below ground, our aquifers and so forth, to protect what we have before it ends up brown like so much of the Great South Bay is today, and in trouble like, I mean, a lot of people have to give up this is in western Long Island, their wells, and go to the Suffolk County Water Authority because their wells have become contaminated. But the Water Authority actually, takes from the same pool.
I know.
Pool below ground. In any case, the Long Island Builders Institute, it was like blackmail, said, we're not. They told Bob Sweeney and the other state legislators involved in the formation of this measure, we're not going to support it unless part of it, actually in the bill itself, you say that we would like to have built 50,000 new housing units. They thought that their political clout, they could twist the arm of these legislators. And, it's Dick Amper of the Long Island Pine Barrens Society, executive director. And a lot of the purest of the water lie below the Pine Barrens.
I know it does,
Because the
yes.
Pine Barrens are in very sandy soil, so the rain goes right through that sand and goes down to the aquifer. It's so pure. Dick Amper, he just said it was despicable. These are the people who created the problem, the bulldozer boys, who want now more housing to create more problems. I mean, there was a piece actually today in Newsday in which the county has just been informed by IBM. Suffolk County created some sort of consultancy relationship with the company IBM in terms of issues of wastewater and all. And IBM, in this big report it made to the county, said that to provide sewering and advanced septic systems, not your usual septic systems, but
Right, what I want to get, the
well,
advanced ones.
with the denitrification and so forth.
Right.
It's going to cost for 200,000 people, and that's a sixth the population, or actually less, 1/7 the Suffolk County has a population of 1.5 million. So for just 200,000, a small fraction of the county's population, it's going to cost, catch this, $7 billion to deal with this wastewater. Under these circumstances, you don't want more development. There was a book done years ago, decades ago, by the Club of Rome called Limits to Growth. And there are limits to growth, particularly on an island which is dependent on the underground water supply for potable water, which is surrounded by these very fragile bays and creeks, which has been up to now, once all of it, just the most beautiful, livable. I mean, the Native Americans lived on Long Island. There were 13 tribes living here. They weren't living up, a few were, I suppose, in the mountains of New Hampshire, being cold in the winter. They came to this great place, Long Island. I mean, wampum is based on the quag, the shell, the clam shell.
I know. They used to go to Fire Island to get it. They never lived on Fire Island. They were smarter. They knew it was only a barrier beach.
Well, Long Island really, in so many ways, is exquisite, splendid, and really must be saved. Well, here in East Hampton, Alec Baldwin, when he came moving out here in the 80s, He commented, hey, they didn't come to East Hampton because he wanted a chic address. He grew up in Massapequa. I mean, when I commute to SUNY or Westbury, I see the sprawl that NASA, and when I was a kid growing up in St. Albans and Queens, we used to take our bicycles, my friends and I, and pedal into Elmont and Valley Stream, and it was all very, it was almost semi-rural at the time. In any case, Alec came here, and in forming East Hampton Conservators, which is a very important group involved in the effort to save East Hampton, he comments that here is what's left of beautiful Long Island, and we have to save it. And let me jump. I mean, here we are at LTV. LTV gets started on the basis of the need for preservation. What occurs is that in 1981, Larry Cantwell, who was the current supervisor, ran earlier for supervisor against Mary Fallon, the Republican, Larry, the Democrat. And Larry said the issue, development, and the bulldozer boys trying to move east and ruin East Hampton like they've ruined so much else of Long Island. Mary Fallon gets elected, but in '82, she eliminates the planning department. She breaks down in tears when she's confronted by citizens at a public event. Fraser Doherty films that event, makes a videotape, puts it on the head end at Salmon's. We used to run the cable operation here at East Hampton, and that becomes the beginning of LTV. Fraser then went on to found LTV based on, the impact, that videotape of Mary Fallon in tears before people outraged in East Hampton because of a threat to their town. That scene.
And here we are, and thank you again. I know
pleasure.
we never have enough time. It's amazing. It's always over before. But that is such an interesting story that's